Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 2021 Next CAPS Summer Bash. I am Corey Mohn. I'm the President and Executive Director of the CAPS Network, which is a profession-based learning model that started in the Blue Valley School District outside of Kansas City 12 years ago, and has now grown to support 76 affiliate programs across over 130 school districts, 19 states, 3 countries. It's been a phenomenal ride. We are delighted to be co-hosting this event this summer with our strategic partners and friends at Northeastern University in Boston. It's my personal hope that today you're not only inspired by what's possible, but you find your next step, that you move forward with your district, your school, or your classroom, and most importantly, you look for ways to move forward and take the next step for your students. With that, it's my pleasure to introduce you to a friend of mine, Lydia Young, the director of Northeastern's Next Initiative. Lydia, we're finally here.
It's real. It's real. And what a year it's been. Thank you, Corey. I'm Dr. Lydia Young. I represent Next, which is Northeastern University's Graduate School of Education network for experiential teaching and learning. We started our network in 2017, and as an arm and into an extension, if you will, into the K-12 space around profession-based learning. Northeastern likes to talk about itself as a 150-year-old startup. And so it was really the perfect coming together with our strategic partners, CAPS Network. And I'm really excited to hear from the educators who are joining us today. We know how important this last year has been and how important the lessons are coming out of it. And so thank you all for joining us. Corey, I'm going to kick it back to you so you can introduce our panelists today, our speakers.
Absolutely. And this event, Lydia, is part of what we're doing to try and raise awareness and to seed more activity with profession-based learning. The idea of giving students a chance to connect to their community and work authentic projects. And there's so many different ways to do it, so many different flavors of this kind of work. We certainly have a certain element of that with CAPS in our model, but there are many models out there, and we want to encourage all of that. And so a few things we want to remind you of as we get started. We encourage you to use the chat function in Zoom during the course of the day. You can start now by letting us know who you are, who you represent, and where you're tuning in from. We would love to learn from you. Share your stories, ask questions. This will all be important for us as ways for us to connect together as we continue to do this work. And the other thing I would share with you is we have a Twitter hashtag that we would love for you to use as well. It's another way for us to connect and share information so that we can see what's happening even in the breakouts that we're not able to attend today. And that hashtag is NextCapsBash. So make sure you share your thoughts there as well. With that, I am so thrilled to be able to introduce you to a good friend of mine, a teacher to both of my daughters, one of their absolute favorites, a Kansas Teacher of the Year finalist and a Lowell Milken Fellow, Mrs. Megan Clark. Megan?
Good morning. Thank you to Next and CAPS for having me. I am so excited to be here. I'm so excited you're here. My name is Megan Clark, and I teach elementary art in a kindergarten through 5th graders in a school in suburban Kansas City metro area in the DeSoto School District. And this is my 18th year of teaching. I'll be starting this fall. I truly believe there's nothing more exciting than getting together here with you today, because a room full of educators, whether it's virtual or in person, is so exciting. We are potential people, right? We get excited about what could be. And that's why some people like me have cabinets full of things like egg cartons and paper towel tubes. Or if you're a high school teacher, maybe you have a ton of books and newspaper clippings that you save because you know they have the potential to become transformative learning materials for your students. Right? We're motivated by the potential and the growth we see from our students every day in the classroom. So this today is the most exciting place to be among potential people like ourselves, people who are interested in inspiring and transforming the world of education. But this year, I feel like we have to take a moment. We have to acknowledge the elephant in the room, right? That this is no ordinary summer break. And we're coming off a school year unlike any other. Many of us feel tired, or like we're finally maybe getting a chance to take a deep breath after a challenging year. 2020 and 2021 changed so many things in our world, and they likely changed us. Staff and students faced hurt, loss, frustration, loneliness, and sometimes even trauma. Some students and teachers felt highly successful with doing things differently during this pandemic school year, especially when they had the resources and support to weather the storm, while others faced really significant struggles. And our students showed a variety of needs. You know, this year for staff was difficult because it's hard to innovate when you're in survival mode, and everything kept changing throughout the year. For me, as an elementary art teacher, the change came with 4 different learning modes for me and my students. I was remote while they were remote and hybrid. They went back in the classroom and I was still remote. And then we were in class together, which felt almost normal. But while I was in class, I also had some students who were remote. This year, we had to continue changing lots of things. You may have had masking in your school district, like my friend Wesley, who teaches in Virginia. Wes is a very animated speaker, so with masking, he had to learn to communicate just with his eyes and find new ways to check in with his high school students to make sure he wasn't missing any of the cues he would normally use to inform his teaching and his connections with students. Many of us had new cleaning protocols. For me, it was the hourly wipe down of every desk, chair, and material students touched, which included thousands of pencils and crayons and markers in the art room. Social distancing was a challenge whether you teach kindergarten or high school. We all know that we're social creatures as humans. And so social distancing can be challenging. It goes against our nature. But many of you found new ways to collaborate and to make students feel comfortable and loved, whether they were in your classroom in person or virtual. And then there was the challenge of technology. Technology might have been new for you. It certainly was different in every place. But technology caused us to rethink what we were teaching, how we were teaching, and why we might use technology in a certain way. It certainly brought some funny moments for me, things I would never expect to happen in the classroom, like meeting every one of my remote students' pets at home, and also the moment when my document camera fell and I heard a remote student yell out, "Mrs. Clark is teaching in shorts." You know, we had the opportunity to connect in a different way with technology. And maybe some of you had the opportunity to innovate. Like my friend Whitney, she teaches ESOL and English in a large urban school district, and she teaches high school level students. For most of the year, they were virtual. And she noticed that the chat box in their Zoom meetings was allowing her language learners the space and processing time to use translation features and really show what they know in class. So when she went back to the classroom and they were all in person, she used the Yo Teach app as a way to keep the chat going on a projector behind her while the live discussion was happening in front of them in the classroom. You know, this year forced us to innovate and to think and do things differently. So it's not surprising that we're all feeling some exhaustion with the constant thinking and rethinking of each aspect of what we do as professionals. I was thinking the other day about this year and about a visual image, you know, being an art teacher, something that we could keep in mind to remember. And I thought of a spyglass, you know, magnifying glass, like Inspector Gadget style, and how magnifying glasses are a lot like living through this last school year. Teaching during the pandemic forced a lot of us to look closely and focus to see what's happening in our classrooms and in our society with a new level of detail. And like you might have seen on TV or in a movie or maybe done yourself, magnifying glasses have the potential to magnify heat and light to burn something. There was a chance this year that you could have gotten burned out. The weight of our jobs were heavy and the change was constant. But you're still here. And we're so excited that you're here and that you didn't burn out in this year. Hopefully you've had a break, and if not, you get a chance to take care of yourself when and however you can. But I praise you for being here today because you're using this time to propel yourself forward. You're not focused solely on the past, but creating a new future informed by the lessons of this past year. Now, for some of us, this magnifier of the pandemic highlighted inequities in our schools and broader communities where our students and families need allies. They need support and they need resources. Or maybe for you, it brought to light the need for social and emotional support, not only within our schools, but partnering with community resources to address mental health concerns that really impact learning. Or maybe you reconsidered your curriculum and the best way to reach our students with relevancy and rigor. That might be why you're here today, because you realize helping students connect with their learning today with their future and professions-based learning is really powerful. So in order to use this magnifying glass of the last year correctly, we have to look closely, but we also can have our view limited sometimes by that magnifying glass. So today we're going to look beyond the last school year. We're going to take the innovation of the last year and move ourselves forward. You know, Stephen Hawking once said that intelligence is the ability to adapt to change. And teachers, you are the most intelligent and adaptable people I know. Sometimes we prove that it's not what happens to you, but how we respond that determines the outcome. So as you plan this next year with all you learned today, know that it may include some unknowns, but keep dreaming. Innovate in the ways you can within the constructs of your classroom or your district. Give grace to those around you, both yourself, your students, and other professionals. Be flexible in the not knowing of what's happening this year because some things may change. But raise up your colleagues, work together, and tackle new challenges. You know, at this point, if we were in person and I was speaking to you and we were in a banquet room, I might ask you to look under your table centerpiece and take home a miniature magnifying glass to remind you of this visual image. But today, hopefully, the image in your mind will suffice. Because I want you to remember that you don't have to be afraid to get up close and look at a problem to see it as an opportunity. I want you to look for new views because that's where innovation happens, and to really focus on the things that are most meaningful for you and your students. I'm so excited about your day of professional learning. Thanks for being here. I truly believe that teaching is the most noble of all professions. I appreciate everything you do for your students and communities, and I'm proud to serve along with you. I wish you a fantastic year. Thank you.
Wow, Megan, thank you so much for those thoughts. Lydia, I'm kind of speechless right now.
Yeah, I'm a little teary, quite honestly. So thank you so much, Megan, for those beautiful and inspiring, reflective words. Really, really a beautiful beginning for us.
And I feel like as someone in education, I'm feeling heard, but I'm also feeling like I'm ready now to be fully inspired to move forward. I'm already there.
Yes.
And with that transition, I want to introduce you to someone that I think is going to help us with that and provide that inspiration. Richard Sheridan, who is the chief storyteller of Menlo Innovations. And I'll just very briefly share with you how we met, because I think it's such a great example of how serendipity can come into play. So a colleague of mine, Chad Ralston, and I were visiting Michigan, and we were in Ann Arbor, and we were having lunch downtown Ann Arbor. And someone in a previous meeting had told us, on a kind of a whim, I had asked a question, if there was anybody in town that we should go see if we have extra time, who would it be? And the answer was, you should check out this company, Menlo Innovations. They're in Ann Arbor. And I kind of put it in the back of my mind, and we ran off and didn't know if we would have time. And we were having lunch, and we noticed we had about an hour of extra time. And I said, I'm trying to remember what that name of that organization was. And we remembered that it was Menlo, and I Google mapped it, and it was a block and a half away from where we were eating. And so we wandered down the street, entered into this place that you see behind Richard right now and are going to see here in a minute, and saw what we thought looked like what CAPS would look like as a tech company. And the funny thing about that was Richard took 45 minutes, walked us around. We were just strangers coming in from nowhere. But the beautiful thing about that was we had Richard come see us here at CAPS. And I remember Richard sharing with the audience that he felt like CAPS was what Menlo would look like as a school. And we knew that we had bonded and that we had something special here. And so with that, I am so pleased to introduce to you Richard Sheridan, Chief Storyteller at Menlo Innovations, Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Thanks so much for that introduction, Corey. I remember that visit so well. I'm glad we open our doors to the world and just let anybody who wants to come in and see us. And all of you are invited someday. We're starting to get back to the office here, and hopefully we will entertain visitors again like we have for most of the 20 years of our existence. You know, tapping into what Megan had shared, this idea of adaptation. How do we change? How do people change? How do organizations change? And I will tell you that I'm always inspired by the words of psychologist Rollo May, who once famously stated that the opposite of courage is not cowardice, but conformity. And I want to take you on a journey towards joy. That is a word that is very prominent here at Menlo, but a journey that involves taking action, running experiments, and getting your teams to fly, perhaps like they never have before. And this idea is born out of something that is near and dear to my heart in terms of organizational design. How do we fight fear inside of our organizations and embrace change? And the most famous phrase you'll hear in this room behind me from our team members regularly is, let's run the experiment. Now, I'm going to tell you a few stories. I have to live up to my title of chief storyteller. And so you probably shouldn't be surprised. I'm going to share some stories. Let me tell you how this run the experiment phrase first really came to be. 14 years ago, Tracy had little Maggie. She went off on maternity leave and she was ready to come back to work after a few months off. And the daycare they planned to use was full, and grandparents lived too far away to help. And she looked at me, yearning to be back in work, yearning to join a new exciting project we had at our software design firm here in Ann Arbor. And she said, we don't know what to do. And I looked at her and I said, well, let's think about it. Now, in this moment, there's a screaming match in my brain. Bright voice, dark voice. Tracy never heard it. Arguments back and forth. Don't you dare say what you're about to say. HR will shoot you. The lawyers will freak out. The insurance policy will go through the roof. The bright voice said, you're an entrepreneur. This is your company. You can do whatever you want. You don't even have an HR department. Now I'm going to stick up for HR people. They've been my best friends over the years. So this isn't about trashing HR people. But I looked at her and I said, bring her in. I said, what do you mean? I said, bring her into work. She said, all day? I said, sure. She said, every day? She was questioning my sanity at this point. And then she looked at me, she says, Rich, where will we put her in this big open space that is Menlo? I said, Tracy, she's 3 months old. She's not going anywhere. Put her in a pack and play and a front pack, anything like that. Just bring her in. She said, what if she makes a fuss? I said, here it's like a noisy restaurant. You'll never hear it. She said, come on, Rich. What if she makes that big baby fuss that would destroy the ambiance of the whole space? And I said, Tracy, you're the mom. I trust you. You'll do the right thing. We'll work it out together. Let's run the experiment. Now, isn't she adorable? Funny thing is, that's not little Maggie. That's little Ellie, Menlo baby number 8. We have actually had 26 Menlo babies in the last 14 years come into the office with their parents all day, every day for several months with the parent or raised by the team over time, as you will learn. This has been a wonderful experiment in our culture and one we had no idea what to expect the results from. And I will tell you, one of the main constructs of Menlo that creates a learning organization here is we pair our people together. 2 people, 1 computer. You might even be able to see some of that work going on behind me here. Well, we even learned you could pair the babies. This is little Josiah and Flynn. We found out that this program works both for extroverted babies and introverted babies, and I'll let you decide which one is which in this picture. But this has been a delightful experiment for us, and we found out that even our customers behave better when you bring babies to meetings. And again, I'm not saying you can bring babies into where you work. That might not be appropriate. That's okay. But this mindset of running the experiment has been so important to adapting our culture. And boy, oh boy, did we need a lot of experiments in the last 16 months, because we have been for 19 years, the traditional Menlo has been a team of people working in close collaboration in one big open room, shoulder to shoulder, sitting side by side. So we had to figure out, how will we keep our culture alive? Now, we speak a lot about our culture here at Menlo. We entertain thousands of guests every year, like Corey, who came in our doors. And we talk about our culture. We talk about joy. And the question is, how does joy fit into a run the experiment kind of culture? And how does run the experiment fit into a joyful culture? Well, I want to compare the forces at work on an airplane to the forces at work on a human organization. There's the force of lift and the countervailing force of weight, the force of thrust and the countervailing force of drag. Most of us, even if you don't have a pilot's license like I do, understand the basic forces that keep a plane aloft. Well, in human organizations, I think the same kind of forces are at work. There's that lift of human energy, maybe in many professional organizations is one of the most squandered energy sources on the planet. I think this is what you teachers get when you have the human energy in your classroom, and probably what you've missed a lot of in the last year. There is that weight of bureaucracy. I probably don't need to overstate that one. The thrust of purpose. Why do we exist? Who do we serve? What would delight look like? And then the drag of fear that holds us back. And where would run the experiment, this phrase, if it became the buzzword of our organizations, where would it fit in? Well, people would start coming to work saying, you know what? I can try things. I can actually be encouraged to run new experiments. We would create a culture that isn't about forming committees to write policies about new ideas, but rather to take action over take a meeting. And the idea that my contribution matters would be present in this kind of culture. And the idea that fear could be diminished over time because people would come in feeling confident that when something isn't working, they can try it. And if it doesn't work, try it again, try it in a different way. It's not about failing, it's about making mistakes faster. So all of these things can help us build a culture of joyful leadership. And we talk broadly at our company and with the world about what does it take to build a culture of joyful leadership. We talk about that idea of purpose. Well, if your experiments are all trailing towards why you exist, what you believe about yourselves, and are connecting you to what would delight look like for the people we serve, those experiments can fuel your purpose. You can start to get leadership from anywhere in your organization. You don't have to rely on ideas only coming from hierarchical authority. You can create new systems in your organization without those committees writing policies. You can create an environment that allows you to care for your team in all directions, to care up to the top level, to care down to the front lines, and care across your peers. You can build that learning organization that we so yearned for when we created Menlo in those first days. And like me, you can start telling stories about the experiments you have run and the effects they've had as a means of spreading this information throughout your communities, either within your schools, or I know you're all connected through the CAPS network. Share those stories across CAPS and really make a big change in education over time. I will tell you, I'm going to finish my talk here with you by going through a number of experiments that we have run over time. For example, the experiments we've done just with our human processes, how we recruit, how we interview, how we onboard, how our team builds the team rather than that hierarchical authority, and how we use this construct of strategic pairing to really improve the everyday learning inside of our organization. Everyone here at Menlo pairs two people to one computer all day long. The pairs are assigned and we switch them every 5 working days. Imagine it's like us creating a seating chart once a week for our whole team. When we interview, we don't ask questions. We pair people together, candidates with one another, and we have them work together. And we tell them the weirdest instructions you'll ever hear in an interview. Your job as a candidate here is to help the person sitting next to you succeed, help them get to the second interview, even though they're competing for the same position you are. And in that experiment, what we're doing is we're teaching our culture from the moment of first contact. All things can change in an environment of run the experiment. And yes, we built this system where we learn together. And I know learning is so important to all of you in this environment. Why do we need to be learning? Well, I will tell you, this space behind me, famously, and many of you don't probably know this, Borders Books started out as a single bookstore about a block away from here on State Street in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Tom and Lou Borders began it. I was a college student when it was here, and I will tell you, it was the most delightful bookstore ever. Well, eventually, as you know, borders expanded across the nation. This space right here that I'm pointing to was their first world headquarters, Borders Books. So we had a front row seat to watch the demise of Borders while Amazon continued this inexorable march to putting them out of business. When Borders started in the late 70s, the internet didn't even exist. There was no Amazon. They had 17 years to respond to this threat, and they didn't. We have to be learning all the time in order to respond to these existential threats in our society, in our business cultures, and in our schools. And so for us, this idea of putting two people together, working shoulder to shoulder, side by side, sharing ideas with one another, working on problem solving together, and then switching the pairs so that information continually gets shared is the basis for our big learning experiment that's been running here at Menlo for 20 years. And I see the same thing when I went to Corey's school to see what was happening at CAPS. And I will tell you, for all of our years, we have shared what we've learned, much like we did that day with Corey. People come by the thousands every year to visit us. We started counting them from the beginning. Just in the last 8 years alone, we've had over 22,000 people come just to visit us and see how we're doing, see how we do what we do, what the effects of these experiments are. And of course, for us, this is a big deal for having all these people come to us. This is where many of our early business relationships started. And this all ended for us dramatically and suddenly in March 2020. Much like your world changed in that month, so did ours. And everyone had to stop coming. And even if they did come, the room was empty because all of us had to go home and be safe. And so we had to figure out a new way, and we had to figure it out fast. By June of 2020, we decided to run our first virtual tour of Menlo, a virtual tour of the virtual Menlo. We didn't even know that could be a thing. We didn't even know if we could do it. We had no idea that anyone would be interested. Well, boy, were they. Over the next year, we have entertained guests from 63 countries, 39 states. Over 2,000 people have traveled from around the world just to come and see us. And of course, that travel was trivial for them. They just had to click on a Zoom link and spend 90 minutes with us. You can do that too. You can come from wherever you are and come visit us for 90 minutes, and it's free. And so this has been a big adaptation for us. This reconnected us to the world that was so interested in finding out how it is that we do what we do. And of course, they were interested in how we adapted, how we sustained, how we're emerging stronger, and how we got back to thriving again in this dramatically different environment than the one we're in now. Because this is what they would come to see. They would come to see people sitting shoulder to shoulder, working side by side. And of course, can't see that in the virtual world. In fact, we couldn't even find each other. One of our early experiments, because we continued to pair even during the pandemic, everybody in 2x2 pairs in Zoom links. Well, we had to figure out, how do we find each other? We have this aspect of Menlo we love to call our high-speed voice technology system here, where we just call out and say, hey, Corey. And he'd say, hey, Rich, and we're in a meeting. Well, we lost that. We lost the ability to find each other. And our team quickly experimented with a simple shared Google Sheet here that you see that said, hey, if Corey and I are in a video link together, why don't we share it with the rest of the team so they can come and visit us whenever they want? Not quite as easy as, hey, Rich and hey, Corey, but not that hard either to just go on the shared drive, click on the link, and suddenly people are with us. We have a daily stand-up meeting every day here at Menlo, called by a dartboard on the wall that you can see right over there. 10 o'clock every morning. Corey, I don't know if you were here at 10 o'clock that morning you came, but you would have attended daily stand-up if you were here. Everybody joins in. Of course, we can't do daily stand-up in a pandemic environment. So we said, well, let's try a Zoom call. Let's get everybody on a Zoom call, 50, 60 people on a Zoom call. It was a complete disaster. Didn't work at all. It was our normal 13-minute delightful daily stand-up meeting was now taking 40 minutes, and it was crushing our spirit. Well, run the experiment to the rescue. Team said, I know, Let's replace this 2-horn plastic Viking helmet that would pass around the circle as our talking stick and replace that with the Zoom chat window. As people sign in, just type in their names and say, I'm next with Corey. Or if Corey got there first, he'd say, I'm next with Rich. And it lined us all up. It became the virtual plastic Viking helmet for us. And suddenly our daily stand-up meetings got back down to 13 minutes. I'm sharing these stories with you so you have this sense of how Run the Experiment can encourage you to think up new ideas, think about them quickly, not get together a team of people that say, what about if we try this? Just go take action over take a meeting. And that's how our team behaves in these circumstances. And then ultimately, become storytellers about the experiments you're running and the results they produce, positively or negatively. People want to hear all of those stories along the way. You know, I get it. A lot of people look at us and they say, you know, Rich, you're a small company. You're an energetic entrepreneur. You got the chance to start from scratch. And of course, this works for you. But we're too, and fill in the blank. We're too big, we're too small, we're too governmental, we're too regulated, we're too bureaucratic, all those things. We're too old, we're too new, we're too small, we're too big. All of those all those adjectives come in to have people describe why the things they get so excited about when they see Menlo couldn't possibly work for them. Well, one of my goals today, not only to inspire you and encourage you, but is to also not let you off the hook. I'm going to use an example here that will stun you. A few years ago, I gave a talk to Mass Mutual Corporation, 300 people on their leadership team. Mass Mutual is a 180-year-old, $30 billion a year life insurance company on the East Coast. They heard my same encouragement to run the experiment, and they did it. And they called me back 6 months later and said, Rich, we want to show you what's happened. And I met with Amy Ferrero, their VP of Claims. Claims is a big deal department inside of an insurance company. Claims is where they're cutting the checks for the beneficiaries of their policies. They process $3 billion a year in claims every year in Amy Ferrero's department. And Amy said, I want to show you the claims department. This 100,000 square foot half height cubicle facility filled with people processing claims at Mass Mutual. And she said, when we turn the corner, Rich, you're going to see helium balloons. I said, oh, what are you celebrating? She said, oh, we're not celebrating. Everywhere there is a balloon taped to a desk is a declaration of the person sitting at that desk. I'm running an experiment. Come talk to me about it. I thought, wow, that's so cool. I never talked about taping balloons to desks. This was totally their idea. As we turned the corner, there were balloons as far as the eye could see. I was amazed. I ran up to Susan's desk. I said, Susan, tell me about your experiment. She sat up straight. She says, well, let me tell you what, I'm in charge of quality. I'm the last step before the check gets cut. I got to do 3 steps, A, B, and C, to make sure this is the right check going to the right person. She says, the trouble is if I find a mistake at step C, I have to go back and redo step B, and that's the longest part of the process. She says, my experiment is do A and then C and then B. Not quite a big deal, seems pretty straightforward, but she is just beaming with energy about this experiment. And I said, Susan, how long have you worked here? She perks up, she says, 19 years. I said, have you always been like this? And her face turned into a scowl. And she said, no, I hated my job before. I hated coming to work every day, dreaded the drive-in. I was counting the days to retirement. I said, what's different now? She says, now we can run experiments. She says, now my ideas matter. I can contribute. I said, what was it like before? She said, Rich, every idea I ever had to go up 5 levels, over, down 5 levels. After a while, every idea died in the vine. She said, I stopped bringing ideas to work. After a while, I said, I'll get my joy elsewhere. This is just a job. I'll count the days to retirement. Now she says, I love my job. Can't wait to get to the office. And I'm looking across this room of helium balloons thinking how many Susans are in this room right now. This is the kind of energy that is available to us. This is when I talk about the lift of human energy. This is it. This is the opportunity we have as individuals and as leaders inside of organizations to spur this kind of energy inside of our environments. By the way, this is now the claims department at Mass Mutual Corporation. Maybe not quite your great-great-grandfather's life insurance company anymore. And question is, how could this work in schools? Are there opportunities inside of schools? Well, our own Ann Arbor Public Schools posted this video. We just happened to find it. They have no connection to us as far as I know whatsoever, but let's watch this 3-minute video on what's happening inside one classroom between these two teachers inside the Ann Arbor Public Schools.
9 times 5 is 45. 9 times 10 is 90.
So this is my 4th year team teaching with my partner, Co. It's the best thing. If you can find a partner that you're compatible with, it makes everything so much easier. We run our classes completely together pretty much at all times, in COVID times and also in before times. When we need to have one large group, we all gather into one room. We have a lesson where one of us is delivering or both of us are. It's great because one person can be talking to the whole group, another can be kind of cycling through, or sometimes it helps just to have 2 people talking about something.
I think that there are definitely benefits because some of my weaknesses are Jason's strengths and some of Jason's weaknesses are my strengths, and it matches up really well. I love the fact that we can spend a lot of time bouncing off ideas off of each other and figuring out what we really want to do and what's really going to work for the kids. It's just really nice having somebody else to get feedback from.
It's great to have a team teacher because your students then have 2 teachers, and that's double the chances for you to make a connection with a student or a student to make a connection with you.
I really like just how fun of an environment, I guess it is. I think it's really fun having a bunch of people in a class. We can all work together and explain things. More strict. Yeah, I feel like Jason likes to joke around. Yeah. Jason's the artist, I guess. Oh yeah. He's the funny artist. Yeah. And I think Co's the person who keeps it all together, because Jason gets sidetracked a bunch.
It makes it more fun to have somebody else in here. Teaching can be such a lonely experience. It's nice to have somebody else around. And it's nice too because we spend so much time talking about even specific kids or, and having somebody else's viewpoint and observations thrown in really helps.
Some years we have 50-some kids between the 2 of our classes, and that sounds nightmarish and chaotic. But with a good system, it's so easy. It becomes this ecosystem of multiple teachers helping kids. It's easier to pull out a group with Co can take the whole class. I can take 6 kids to work on a concept that maybe a few are having trouble with, or kids who are done with something, one of us can take them and do something else and do an extension activity. We have complementary strengths and challenges. So Co is hyper organized and excellent at figuring out how to proceduralize something, whereas I have lots of lofty ideas and left to my own devices, I don't know if a lot of them might happen, because sometimes when you are thinking a lot about how to do something exciting and interesting and new, you need someone who can pull you back to earth and say, all right, but what are they going to do today, this week, next week? How are we going to create procedures for this, create useful, discrete assignments? So it really helps to collaborate like that, because we, again, have such differing strengths, and it works out that they very much complement each other.
You're a super genius. Well done. High
So I want to leave you with one really big encouraging thought, because a lot of times people say, Rich, I get it. You're the top guy. You're the leader. You can make things happen. But I want to encourage you to start where you are. Maybe some of these stories, including the teacher story, have inspired you. Maybe many of you have already tried something like this and you got a little bit more from what you saw that they were doing together. But my story starts in this McDonald's at Detroit Metro Airport. I have a weakness: quarter pounder with cheese, large fry, Coca-Cola at this McDonald's. I almost never go to McDonald's other than at the airport. I'm traveling, I'm moving fast, and a fast food meal works really well for my schedule. And in this McDonald's, every time I was there, was this guy named Mike. I knew it because his badge said Mike on his McDonald's shirt. He was an older guy. He was hustling around from table to table, cleaning up the stuff we all carelessly left behind. And every time he got near me, he'd lean in, he'd say, "How's it going? Have a safe flight. Can I get you anything? Can I get you a napkin?" every single time. And I was like amazed. How did they find this guy? They were so lucky to have him. And how did he keep his energy up at that level every single day? And then one day I was there and Mike must have been off shift. And this young kid was pulling a sled full of garbage out of the back of the restaurant. And as he pulled it by my table, he leaned in. He says, "How's it going? Have a safe flight. Can I get you anything? Can I get you a napkin?" I thought to myself, what is going on at this McDonald's? This is one of the most relationless places on the planet, inside of one of the most relationless places on the planet, an international airport. And here these guys every day are doling out with enthusiasm kindness and napkins. Really? So I went up and manager and I thanked him. I said, "I noticed," and he thanked me for noticing. He said, "Rich, this is a highly competitive environment. Anything we can do to keep up with Plum Market across the way, we're going to try." And here's the point. I'm pretty sure that manager didn't go to McDonald's corporate and say, "Hey guys, could you form a committee to write a policy on doling out kindness and napkins?" No, they just did it. They ran the experiment. And here's the beautiful thing. It was free. I never even asked for a napkin. All of these opportunities are available to each and every one of us. We can start right from where we are. And that's what I want you to think about as you leave your sessions today. When you hear something, and because your attitude will determine the altitude you get with your own human energy. Take that action over take a meeting. Don't form committees to write policies, just take that action. Consider that failing faster, making mistakes faster is a better approach than the word failure, because I think failure is too overloaded a word. Mistakes are, yeah, we tried something, it didn't work, we're gonna try something else. Choose small, fast mistakes, encourage each other, and tell those stories. Share it with your community so they know what you're trying and you can hear what they're trying. So take action, run the experiment, and watch your teams fly. Because as I said, a non-conforming approach, as Rollo May would have encouraged me on if he had ever spoken to me, is to add joy into our environments. Corey, I want to thank you again for inviting me into your world. I hope this message sits well with your team and they leave here taking action and running experiments.
Richard, that was fantastic. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate it. And before we let you go, where can people go to learn more about your work?
Yeah, if you go to our website, menloinnovations.com, and in fact, there's a special location we prepared just for your guests today. This menloinnovations.com/joy/preparing for purpose. If they write that link down, they go to that link, they will find the landing page. They can come take tours if they're interested. Again, those tours are free. We offer them a couple of times a week, every week. So, and hopefully we'll be doing those in person again sometime soon.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Richard. Man, how about Megan Clark and Richard Sheridan getting us started on the 2021 bash? Fantastic. So thank you so much, everyone. We have a great day ahead full of many opportunities for us to engage. We're going to be heading into a breakout opportunity based on your level of interactivity and comfort with profession-based learning. So we've got 3 different options for you to choose from. Tremendous high energy practitioners that can share their stories and also be able to engage with you in your conversations. Following that, we're going to be back in a general session that will include 4 alums, professionals now that are came from the CAPS model, and they'll be facilitated by Julia Freeland Fisher, who is a leading expert in social capital and the research behind how important it is to develop networks and build who you know. That is going to be such a terrific session. Beyond that, remember hashtag NextCapsBash. We've got some great activity happening there on Twitter. We'd love for your reflections, your questions, for you to share your stories. And we look forward to continuing our journey with